You may not be familiar with him, but I know everybody around here is. You have either seen his billboards around. He is host of the weekly show. He is one of the region's most renowned personal injury lawyers. As well, you may be familiar with his impressive and thought-provoking commercials that are aired on television. My guest today is none other than David J. Maloney. Thank you, sir, for being with us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. I know you are busy. I know you guys have a lot going on there with TV commercials, a TV show, and being an attorney. Do you ever get to rest?
Well, and then there's being a husband and father, which also
there you go.
Which it's those are kind of actually that's one and two, and then everything else kind of follows after that. But
right.
Yeah, organization is key. That's kind of how I kind of keep it all together. But outside of that, yeah, it's crazy.
Awesome. Now, you and I were discussing off camera just a moment ago that you are originally from the real Woodstock.
I went to Woodstock Elementary School.
How about that?
Woodstock is an interesting area because the concert was supposed to be there. Everybody thinks the concert was there.
Yeah.
The concert was actually, 60, 90 miles south in a town called Bethel. What I understand is that they found out soon, like weeks before, that there might be a few more people than they thought were coming.
Right.
And so they moved it.
Wow.
And so they actually had it in Bethel. Now, in '94, when I was old enough to actually go, they had the next Woodstock. And that one they had in a town called Saugerties, which was really about 10 miles to the east of Woodstock. And so the cool thing about that was I went to that one, and when everybody else was sleeping in mud, I was sleeping on my mom's sofa.
Come on now, I hear you. Wow. So how do you end up from there all the way on the Gulf Coast, being one of, I hate to use this term, but it is what it is, being one of our most famous attorneys here on the Gulf Coast?
Well, when I was 13, I read To Kill a Mockingbird.
Okay.
And I went, that's what I want to be.
Wow.
And I told my father, my parents were separated. My mom had remarried, but my father had me for some sort of visitation.
Okay.
And we were in the car heading somewhere, and I told him that, we had to read this book. And then frankly, we also watched it, watched the movie for Mrs. Wesselman's English class. And I knew that was what I wanted to be. I just knew at that point. I was like 13, I think. And I told my father, and I'd found out that he had always wanted to be an attorney, but my being born kind of unexpectedly derailed that.
Okay.
And so that even bolstered it, because I was like, he always wanted to be. And so therefore and then when I went to law school, I thought, I was still thinking, okay, I'm going to be this, Atticus type, character. And then you find out that, that may not be the exact area of law you want to be in.
Yeah.
And I then started helping people who were hurt in different ways, and learned that I was actually pretty good at it.
Yeah.
So I stuck with it.
Yeah. I think an attorney, I know people enter into all careers for different reasons and whatever. We look at all of that when we make our decision on what we're going to do in life. But I think to be an attorney, to me, even though I'm not an attorney, a good attorney, a good successful, you have to care about people, right?
This is one of the only occupations that I mean, I'm sure there are many others, but this is an occupation where I can be genuinely idealistic and capitalistic at the same time.
Okay.
A lot of careers, you've got to pick one or the other. If you're a teacher, you're idealistic, but you're sacrificing income. If you're a big leader in industry, you're generally just steamrolling over whatever it is you have to steamroll over in order to meet your bottom line. And ideals sometimes fall by the wayside.
Sure.
This is one thing that I can do where I can sleep at night, where I can make a good living, but I can genuinely help people.
Yeah, that is awesome. Let me ask you this, without divulging any information, details or whatever, you've been doing this how many years now?
I've been licensed since 92, but I've been focusing primarily on personal injury since 2000.
Okay. Maybe is there one story that just kind of stands out where someone was just terribly done wrong and you were able to help them out in a way that maybe it didn't look like they were going to be able to come out on top of this thing?
Well, I'll tell you. After we're done with the show, I have to make a ride out to Baldwin County. I told you that before we started doing the show. Mm-hmm. And I'm going out to meet with a former client of mine, Terry Clements. And Terry's son was a championship rodeo rider.
Okay.
Terry was a rodeo rider back in the day. And his son, Jake, followed in his father's footsteps. Mm-hmm. The week before Jake was killed, he had been featured on ESPN. And his father could not have been any prouder. Jake was the apple of Terry's eye. Jake was killed by a drunk driver. Mm. And it devastated Terry, devastated him. Yeah. He was beside himself. He didn't get much sleep. He lost a bunch of weight because he wasn't eating. Every time I talked to him, he was just a wreck. Mm. And he had decided that he needed to do something. He needed something to give his life some purpose. Mm. And so he decided he was going to put on a rodeo in Jacob's honor. Mm-hmm. And he invited me and my wife and my family. And so we went. And all of the other people that Jake had competed with, all the other riders, rodeo riders, they, from all over the country, mm-hmm. came for this event in Baldwin County. Mm-hmm. And when it came time for the national anthem, all of the horses came out and the one horse came out, Jake's horse came out without him on it.
Wow.
Draped with an American flag and a picture of Jacob on it. And that wasn't the end of the story.
Yeah.
There wasn't a dry eye in the house.
Sure.
And then the riders came out and competed. And when it came time when Jacob would normally come out, his old man Terry came out on the bull in his place.
Oh, wow.
We didn't know it, but as the bull exited the gate, it smashed Terry's side into the gate, breaking his arm in two places. Mm. Terry still stayed on that bull for 4.2 seconds.
Wow.
Upon which he was tossed, trampled, and suffered multiple other serious injuries, fractures. He got off the bull, the rodeo. Well, he was tossed off the bull. The rodeo clown came out and got the bull away from him. They got him out of, the corral, if that's what you call it.
Sure.
Then he went back to the side. I got up and got off the bleachers and ran down to check on him and said, "You got to get yourself to a hospital." He said, "No, I've got a rodeo to finish." Mm. He stayed.
Wow.
Through the entire rest of that rodeo. And then, after it was over, he loaded all of the cattle back onto his trucks and then went back to his farm and unloaded every single one of them.
My goodness.
He didn't go to the hospital until 5 a.m. the next morning.
Wow.
We later found out the drunk didn't have much insurance. But I was able to find a way to get the coverage on Terry's semis to somehow apply. See, you can have something called uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage. And normally it wouldn't apply because those would be commercial vehicles. And the way uninsured motorist coverage works is it follows resident relatives of a household. And Terry being a local farmer and rodeo rider, didn't incorporate. So these vehicles were still in his personal name.
Okay.
And his son was still listed as being a resident at his house because his son was a touring rodeo rider. So his home was Terry's home.
Right.
So I was able to get all of this big coverage from each of his semis to apply.
Wow.
Now, there's no amount of money I could ever get Terry that would make this up to him.
Sure.
But Terry started a charity. He started a scholarship
Oh, wow.
in his son's name. And now, to this day, there is also the state of Alabama has a Jacob Clemens Award for rodeo riding. And oddly enough, or interesting enough, or coincidentally enough, Terry's niece, I think, won it last year.
Oh, wow.
So, when it comes to things like this, there's no amount of money I'm going to be able to get that's going to make it up to somebody. But
Sure.
I'm going to do everything I can to not leave any stone unturned. And when it comes, to these types of cases, it's not just about the money. It's also about just making things right.